Welcome to Middle Math Academy, Ratio Tables Level Number 2. Our learning targets today are I can find the missing value in a ratio table, I can write equivalent ratios in a ratio table, and I can write multiplication and division number sentences to help identify patterns in a ratio table. If you completed level number 1, we focused just on multiplication number sentences. Today, we'll also work on division number sentences. Go ahead and rate yourself before the lesson, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. How do you feel about these learning targets before we start? How confident? Let's take a look at our opening problems. What do you already know about ratios or ratio tables? Write an example of a ratio or draw a picture to represent a ratio. Go ahead and take a minute and complete our opening problems. Pause the video and come back when you're done. Here's the example I did. The ratio of circles to squares is 3:2. Because circles came first, I know circles goes with 3. Squares came second. I know squares came with 2. The order matters with ratios. So now let's take a look at our notes. And remember to write with me. Ratio tables help us keep our data organized. A ratio table helps us visualize the relationship between two quantities and let's just pause there and take a look at our table over here and a quick example. It says for every 2 cups of orange juice, there are 6 cups of blueberries. So I know we're talking about orange juice and blueberries. Those are our quantities. So we're going to write them in the headers of our ratio table. Let's do that now. Remember, you can always pause the video if you need more time. So it says 2 cups of orange juice and 6 cups of blueberries. So I'm going to write 2 cups of orange juice and 6 cups of blueberries. Now, if we doubled our recipe, I would multiply our orange juice times 2 and get 4, and our blueberries times 2, so 6 times 2 is 12. Whatever you do to one side of the ratio table, you need to do to the other. So I multiplied my orange juice times 2, so I'm going to multiply my blueberries times 2. Let's say we tripled our recipe. We can multiply 2 times 3 and get 6, and 6 times 3 and get 18. Now, one important key point about ratio tables is we don't have to keep up the pattern. Basically, order is not important in ratio tables. So let me give you an example. Now, technically, we could continue this pattern and go 2, 4, 6, 8, 6, 12, 18, 24, or we could change up the order and even go multiply our orange juice 2 times 100, and whatever you do to one side of your ratio table, you have to do to the other. And we can multiply 6 times 100, and they would still be equivalent ratios. So 2 times 100 is 200, and 6 times 100 is 600. Pause the video and fill in that last row of the ratio table on your own by multiplying the orange juice and blueberries by the same number. When we fill in ratio tables and multiply or divide both sides by the same number, we call that equivalent ratios. Equivalent ratios are ratios that have the same value, meaning they can be written in different ways, but they will always have the same meaning. So let's go back to our ratio table and let's find the value of the ratio. To find the value of the ratio, we can divide. So I'm going to divide 6 blueberries divided by 2 orange juice. And I know 6 divided by 2 is 3. So a way you can always check your work is you can divide any of your blueberries by its corresponding orange juice, and you should always get 3. Let's try another value. 18 blueberries divided by 6 orange juice equals 3. So the value of our ratio is 3. Remember, you can always pause the video if you need more time. So this example down here, we can write 6 to 2 and 18 to 6, right? The two values or the two ratios that we divided are equivalent ratios. They represent a relationship where there are 6 parts of the first quantity for every 2 parts of the second quantity. Let's take a look at example A. Mr. O'Connor uses 8 yards of fabric for every 2 shirts he creates for his store. So the 2 quantities we're talking about are yards of fabric and shirts. So we're going to write that at the top of our ratio table. I'm going to write fabric and then in parentheses yards and then shirts. Our next step is to write the ratio that we're given. So we know 8 goes with fabric, so we can label that first. And 2 goes with shirts. So now we can just continue filling in this ratio table. If I doubled it, 8 times 2 is 16, and 2 times 2 is 4. Pause the video and fill in this third row if you tripled your fabric. So if we did 8 times 3, we get 24, and 2 times 3 is 6. Now remember, the order in a ratio table doesn't matter as long as you still have equivalent ratios, as long as your value is still the same. So instead of multiplying by 3, we could multiply by 100. Eight times 100 is 800, and 2 times 100 is 200. I want you to pause the video and fill in this last row on your own. Now, ratio tables are all about patterns. So when we're writing our number sentences, we're going to try to notice these patterns. So I'm going to ask myself, what do I need to do to my shirts to get my fabric? Okay, because I know my fabric is a bigger number, so I'm probably going to multiply. So I'm going to think to myself, 2 times what is 8? Well, I know 2 times 4 is 8. Ask yourself to double check. Is 4 times 4 16? Is 6 times 4 24? The answer is yes, and 200 times 4 is 800. So I can always take my shirts and multiply them by 4 to get my fabric. Then I can write an example to kind of prove my answer is correct. I can take any value for shirts. Let's just take 4 shirts. 4 shirts times 4 equals 16 yards of fabric. which is what's represented in our table. I should have written yards of fabric up here as well. And then, sorry, it's a little bit messy here. It's a little bit hard with a marker. Okay, now let's take a look at our division number sentence. Well, if I'm multiplying my shirts times 4, I can do the inverse of multiplication, which is division, except I'm going to do it the other direction. So 24 divided by 4 equals 6. 800 divided by 4 equals 200. So we can always take our fabric, our yards of fabric, and divide it by 4 to get the number of shirts we can make. And then we can plug in any number to prove that that's true. So for example, 24 yards of fabric divided by 4 equals 6 shirts. So we can always divide to find our value of our ratio. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Or you can notice the pattern. We could either multiply or divide our quantities by 4, which lets me know that is the value of our ratio. Flip to page number 2. Page 2 says, use the ratio description to fill in each ratio table. Write a multiplication and division number sentence to show the relationship between quantities. I'm going to do A with you and then have you complete the other 2 on your own. A says, for every 2 strawberries, there are 8 blueberries. So our ratio tables are already labeled with strawberries and blueberries. So I'm going to start by labeling 2 strawberries and 8 blueberries. Now I can double this and get 4 and 16. I multiplied both by 2. I can triple 2. 2 times 3 is 6. And 8 times 3 is 24. And then like I mentioned on page 1, we can really multiply any number as long as we do it to both sides. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 20, change it up a little bit, and 8 times 20. Well, I know 2 times 2 is 4, so 2 times 20 is 40. 8 times 2 is 16, so 8 times 20 is 160. I'll just add a 0. Fill in that last row on your own with your own equivalent ratio. All right, now let's write our number sentences. I like to start with multiplication, but if you notice a division pattern first, that's fine too. I notice that I can take my strawberries and multiply them by 4 to get my blueberries. 2 times 4 is 8. 4 times 4 is 16. So under multiplication number sentences, I'm going to write strawberries times 4 equals blueberries. I want you to write your own example under this to show that this is true. I'll write one, but I want you to choose different numbers. So one answer is I could write 6 strawberries times 4 equals 24 blueberries. You choose different numbers. Sorry, I ran out of room a little bit there. All right, let's look at our division number sentences. So now I know if I multiply my strawberries times 4, I get blueberries. So instead of going this direction, when I'm looking for my division number sentence, I'm going to go the other way. So I can do 24, or 24 blueberries, divided by 4 gives us our 6 strawberries. So our division number sentence is reversed. We're going to start with blueberries, take our blueberries and divide them by 4 to get our strawberries. Once again, I want you to choose a different numbers than the ones I'm choosing here. For my example, I'm going to do 160 blueberries divided by 4 equals 40 strawberries. So the value of our ratio is 4. Complete the rest of page number 2 and then come back to the video. Let's look at A on page number 3. The table below shows the relationship between the hours worked and money earned. So it basically says for every 2 hours we work, we earn $20. Pause the video and fill in this ratio table with equivalent ratios. There are a lot of different answers for this ratio table. Here's an example of some of the answers that you could have. Now, if you didn't have these exact answers, that's okay. As long as your value of your ratio is the same, then you're good. So let's try to figure out what the value of our ratio is. Remember, we're looking for patterns. So I'm going to ask myself, how do I go from 2 to 20? Am I going to multiply or divide? Well, I know I'm going from a smaller number to a bigger number. So I'm going to multiply. 2 times 10 is 20. 4 times 10 is 40. So it looks like the value of our ratio is 10. So I can always take my hours worked and multiply it by 10 to get my money earned. I wrote in pencil this time, so hopefully it looks a little less messy. I'm going to let you pause the video and then write your own example under your multiplication number sentence. Now let's take a look at our division number sentence. I know if I'm multiplying my hours times 10 to get my money, to figure out our division number sentence, I'm going to go the opposite direction and divide by 10. So I can take my money earned and divide it by 10 to get our hours worked. Once again, under your division number sentence, I want you to choose values from the ratio table to make it true. Go ahead and complete the rest of page 3 and then come back to the video. On page 4, it says, fill in the missing value in each ratio table, write a multiplication and division number sentence to show the relationship between quantities. So I'm going to get you started on problem A, and then have you complete the rest of the page on your own. A says the ratio of red marbles to green marbles is 2 to 6. So I know if red marbles comes first, then that belongs with the 2 because 2 came first in our ratio. Green marbles came second, so that belongs with our second number, 6. Remember, step 1, we're really looking for patterns. So ask yourself, what do I need to do to my red marbles to get my green marbles? Well, I know 2 times 3 equals 6. So if 2 times 3 equals 6, I can multiply any of my red marble values by 3 and get our green marble values. So I can multiply 4 times 3, which is 12, 200 times 3, and 20 times 3. 200 times 3 is 600, and 20 times 3 is 60. Pause the video and go ahead and write your multiplication number sentence, your division number sentence, and the value of the ratio on your own, and then come back to the video. So we know we could take our red marbles and multiply them by 3 to get our green marbles. So red marbles times 3 equals green marbles. And you could write an example underneath as well, like 2 red marbles times 3 equals 6 green marbles. Now for our division number sentence, instead of starting with red marbles, we're going to start with green marbles. Green marbles divided by 3 equals red marbles. So you could say 6 green marbles divided by 3 equals 2 red marbles. So the value of our ratio is 3. Complete the rest of part 4, then come back to the video. Part 5 is extremely similar to everything we've already practiced today, so I'm going to have you complete this whole page on your own and then come back to the video. Page number 6. Page number 6 says, Kristen is making necklaces. She made a table that shows a relationship between the number of beads and the number of necklaces she can make. Kristen made an error in one row. What row has an error? What should the correct number of beads be in the row with the error? Take a look at the table and answer A and B on your own. Pause the video, come back once you're done. Remember, ratio tables are all about patterns. So when I look at this table, I can see I'm multiplying my necklaces times 4 to get my beads. 1 times 4 is 4. Okay, let's double check that that's the pattern for all of them though. Is 2 times 4 8? Yes, it is. So that lets me know we can multiply our necklaces times 4 to get our beads. Let's see where we go wrong though. Is 3 times 4 16? No, it is not. But let's double check. It's always good practice to go all the way through. Is 20 times 4 80? Yes, it is. These two were correct as well. And is 100 times 4 400? Yes, it is. So which row had the incorrect answer? Row 3 was wrong. And it says, what should the correct number of beads be? Well, remember, we can always multiply our necklaces times 4 to get our beads. So 3 times 4 is 12. Our closing problem says, write a ratio description. So right here, you're going to make up your own ratio description. And a hint is, you can start with the keywords for every. For every 3 dogs, there's 2 cats. For every 2 circles, there's 1 square, and so on. You come up with your own. Once you write your ratio description, you'll make a ratio table. Don't forget to label what quantities you're talking about. And then you're going to write a multiplication and division number sentence to represent your ratio table. So go ahead and do that. Pause the video and then come back. Our last step is we're going to go over a few debrief questions. In your own words, write what you learned today. How much effort did you put in during class? Rate yourself 1 through 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest. And then the last debrief question is, what do you think is a common misconception a student might make when filling in ratio tables? Maybe it was a mistake you made today. Mistakes are okay. They help us learn. After you're done answering the debrief questions, you're going to go back to page number 1 and rate yourself after the lesson now that we've practiced some more. So at the very beginning of the lesson, before we practice, you rated yourself 1 through 5. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Now you're going to circle 1 through 5. How do you feel now that you got some more practice? Thank you so much for joining me today. If you want some more ratio tables practice, we also have level number 3, which incorporates decimals. And then we have ratio tables and graphing for levels number 4 and 5. Hope you have a wonderful day.